form of digital watermark. Mm-hmm. That is actually a cryptographic evidence
that
this is real. That is actually a cryptographic evidence. Again, the convergence of blockchain and AI. Now, with AI, you can expect within this year, we're going to see deepfake so real, you cannot tell the difference. People watching this on live stream, they will not know what's in here.
We're not here.
We're having dinner somewhere else.
Current situation.
To counter that, you will need some form of digital watermark.
History.
Mm-hmm. That is actually a cryptographic evidence.
We are not special.
Yeah. It's my signature, his signature.
Who puts that? The tech companies? By the way, they're so excited at the back. They're trading crypto on the back of these comments.
I'm mirroring what we are today.
No, we control our private key.
It's other people are going
to it'll be personal.
We'll have control.
It's going to be like your irises, your fingerprints. It'll be a digital.
But it's stored on blockchain, witnessed by the global population.
Everybody knows.
Cannot be faked.
Yeah. But does this change everything for just capital markets?
It will. Yeah, I mean, my gosh, if we could tokenize bonds and stocks tomorrow, one of the great things that BlackRock is being accused of is how much vote we have. I wouldn't vote anymore because we would be able, through tokenization, to know the owner of record instantaneous, and each owner of record will do their proxy voting. I would love that outcome. No, but it would democratize investing in all ways that we can't imagine.
Even political system, how you vote in your country.
Yeah.
And do you think that, again, the Trump administration will accelerate that?
I think they're moving that direction. How far they actually will go remains.
But if you do have a digital validator, like your fingerprints or your irises, I mean, you could tokenize voting. You could do everything.
So speaking of China today, what's the biggest misconceptions about China
how we think and how we live and what we do? And
we've been talking to some Southeast Asian governments, including Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia. All of them historically have the populations who are trading black market, bitcoins, and what have you. But now the governments are realizing U.S. is driving a global policy shift. So they're now doing something very clever. They're saying, you know what, we're going to issue a new form of digital ID to every single citizen. Along with that is a digital wallet.
Which Brazil and India has already done.
You're both so
That is the key to a Chinese sense of history. The most important things in the Chinese heritage, that there's only one China, only one sun in the sky, only one China. It must be united, and that is the ideal position. When you're united, you can do all sorts of things. When you're divided, there's chaos.
Meet Wang Gongwu, a Singapore-based professor and world-renowned expert on China history. He studied in the UK and has taught
That is the key to a Chinese sense of history. The most important things in the Chinese heritage, that there's only one China, only one sun in the sky, only one China. It must be united, and that is the ideal position. When you're united, you can do all sorts of things. When you're divided, there's chaos.
Meet Wang Gongwu, a Singapore-based professor and world-renowned expert on China history. He studied in the UK and has taught in Malaysia, Singapore and Australia. The professor shared how Chinese history still shapes modern leaders' thinking, how choosing between the American and Soviet models influenced China's future, and why many Chinese accept fewer freedoms in exchange for stability and growth. I'm Max Chernov, your insider to Global Life. So speaking of China today, what's the biggest misconceptions about China in the world right now? And what do we know, maybe the second part, what do we have to know about Chinese history to understand China and Chinese foreign affairs right now?
I think we have to go back a little bit to say that by 1900 or so, the Chinese elite had become aware, especially after their defeat by the Japanese in the First Sino-Japanese War in 1894. By 1900 or so, they were more or less aware that Chinese empire, the Qing Empire, Chinese civilization itself was under threat, whether they could survive or not. So by the time they created the Republic of China, the first revolution, there was a political revolution out with the dynasties, setting up a republic, the model of which was France and the United States. No monarchy, a president, a republic, and we would become a nation state. They had already decided they would become a kind of nation state, but inheriting the borders of the Qing Empire as China. I would say that the revolution was unsuccessful. All that happened was the country was divided into different warlords, and for about 15 years, the warlords were fighting each other to become the president of China. It became primarily a war between the nationalists and a civil war in which the Soviet Union was at least under giving some support to the Chinese Communist Party, and the Americans and the British were supporting the nationalists. The Russians took over Manchuria. They took over all the Japanese arms and factories and everything. They used that to help the Chinese Communist Party. And it is from Manchuria that they finally started their victory southwards into China. So when you look at it that way, the Chinese situation was one of how do you save China in the middle of all that? And the nationalists were trying, never really had a chance. By the time the nationalists set up their government in 1928, the Japanese were already challenging the nationalists to join them to fight the communists. And Chiang Kai-shek knew what the Japanese wanted. They had taken Manchuria. They set up Manchukuo as a vassal state of the Japanese, really a puppet of the Japanese. You hear the Manchukuo. And so Manchuria was already Japanese. And they were marching down from Manchuria. And so Chiang Kai-shek was aware that what the Japanese really wanted was to dominate China. In the name of fighting the communists together, made the Chinese people feel that China was in grave danger of disappearing altogether. And the Chinese civilization was already out of date, completely obsolete, and we have to learn from the West. Who decided that they would learn from the West is hard to pin down. Many people were advocating it, but how much? There were two Wests, both were West. One West was facing the Pacific, the United States representing the West, the Anglo-American power, was socialism of the Soviet Union. That was also the West, because in the eyes of the Westerners, of the Americans, the Soviet Union is Asiatic. It's not European.
Somewhere in Asia.